The year was 1968. Life in the United States was a bit tense. Martin Luther King was assassinated on April 4th of that year. Just 2 months later, Robert F. Kennedy met the same fate. But on the brighter side, the Civil Rights Act of 1968 was signed into law. And in October 1968, Apollo 7 became the first successful US space mission to launch, and in December, Apollo 8 made history as the first mission to orbit the moon and return safely to Earth. But as the year came to a close, a cold and calculating killer who called himself the Zodiac lurked in the shadows, taunting police, mocking the press, and leaving a trail of terror and dead bodies behind. Today, we will dive into the chilling story of his crimes, the theories about who he might be, and whether this mystery killer will ever be found. To this day, his identity remains one of America's greatest unsolved mysteries. On a cold December night, high school sweethearts Betty Lou Jensen, 16 years old, and David Faraday, 17, parked along Lake Herman Road near Vallejo, California. The teenage couple was on their first date. As they sat in their car, a vehicle pulled up beside them, and the man started firing shots into their car, forcing them out. Faraday was shot once in the head at close range, while Jensen was shot 5 times in the back as she tried to flee. Both died at the scene. What was meant to be a quiet romantic evening ended in tragedy. At 11:10 p.m., a driver discovered the couple's bodies and called the police. At the time, investigators believed the killer could be a jealous lover or a madman who wanted to kill. Despite a long investigation, no solid suspects were found, though the murders were widely covered in the news. Just after midnight on Independence Day, couple Darlene Ferrin, 22, and Michael Majo, 19, sat in a car in Blue Rock Springs Park, also near Vail, when a man with a flashlight approached. In an instant, the man opened fire, shooting Ferrin 5 times. She died on the scene. Majo was also shot 4 times but survived. Some teenagers drove into the parking lot, saw the wounded couple, and called for help. Police arrived at 12:20 a.m. Farron was pronounced dead, but Majo, who survived, was able to give a description of the shooter. He described him as a heavy-set white man, about 5'8" tall, weighing around 195 to 200 pounds, with a large face and curly light brown hair. These details didn't lead to a suspect. However, shortly after 12:40 a.m., the Vallejo Police Department got a call from a payphone just 2 blocks away. The man called to claim responsibility for this attack and the previous murders of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen. This marked the beginning of several taunting messages the killer would send to police and the media. In August 1969, he mailed identical letters to the Vallejo Times, San Francisco Chronicle, and San Francisco Examiner, claiming responsibility for the murders. The letters also included a cipher, which is like an encrypted message, which he said contained his identity. He demanded the newspapers print the cipher on their front pages, threatening to kill again if they didn't. The Chronicle printed it, and on August 4th, the killer sent another letter asking to be referred to as the Zodiac. A month later, 2 college students became victims of the Zodiac killer. Brian Hartnell, 20, and Cecilia Shepard, 22, were having a picnic by Lake Berryessa in Napa County, California. A while later, Cecilia noticed a man watching them from a distance. He stepped out from behind a tree, wearing a black hood and a strange white symbol on his chest. He pointed a gun at them. The man claimed he had escaped from jail after killing a guard and needed their car and money to get to Mexico. He made Cecilia tie up Brian with plastic rope, then tightened the ropes himself. They both thought it was just a robbery until the man pulled out a knife and started stabbing them. Hartnell was attacked first and was stabbed 6 times. Cecilia was stabbed 10 times. After the assault, the man walked away. After several minutes, a nearby fisherman heard the couple screaming and alerted park rangers. It took nearly an hour for an ambulance to arrive, at which time both victims were in critical condition. Unfortunately, Cecilia Shepard died of her injuries, but Brian Hartnell survived. Just over an hour after the attack, the Napa Police Department received a call from a man claiming responsibility for the crime. The call was quickly traced to a phone booth in downtown Napa, and fingerprints were later recovered. The Napa County sheriffs later found the attacker's written message on the victim's car door. The message included the date of the Faraday Jensen and the Farron Majo attacks and was signed with the killer's Zodiac symbol, a cross inside a circle. Cab driver Paul Stein picked up a passenger at Presidio Heights in San Francisco, California. At the destination, the passenger shot him in the head, killing him. The killer took Paul's wallet and car keys and tore off a piece of Paul's shirt. 2 days later, he mailed them to the San Francisco Chronicles along with a letter taking credit for the murder and mocking the police for not catching him. During the murder investigation of Paul Stein, the Zodiac came very close to being caught. After shooting Stein, he was seen by 3 teenagers wiping down the cab and walking away. They quickly called the police and described the suspect as a white male. However, a dispatcher mistakenly broadcast the suspect as a black male. As a result, officers responding to the call drove past a white man walking nearby who perfectly matched the actual killer's description. Because of the wrong information, they didn't stop him. Soon after, the Zodiac sent the letter mocking the police for not catching him. Paul Stein was the Zodiac killer's last confirmed victim, but several other unofficial cases have been linked to him, including the murders of Sherry Jo Bates and the abduction of Kathleen Jones. Though never officially confirmed, the Zodiac claimed involvement in the brutal stabbing of 18-year-old Sherry Jo Bates, murdered near Riverside, California on October 30th, 1966. On March 22nd, 1970, Kathleen Jones was driving with her infant daughter near Modesto, California, when a man in a car flagged her down, saying her wheel was loose. He offered to fix it, but instead loosened the lug nuts so that the wheel would come off. When she started driving again, it quickly fell off. The man then offered to give her and her baby a ride to a service station. Once in the car, Kathleen noticed the man wasn't heading toward any station. He kept driving in circles for nearly an hour and a half. She was terrified and waited for a chance to get away. Finally, while the car slowed at an intersection, she grabbed her baby and jumped out of the moving car, hiding in a nearby field. She later reported this to the police, and claimed the man looked like the Zodiac sketch. A short time later, Zodiac claimed responsibility for the crime in a letter. In letters to the media, the Zodiac claimed to have taken 37 lives. Though 5 murders and 2 attempted murders are confirmed, the identities of his other claimed victims remain a mystery. Who was the Zodiac killer? To this day, the Zodiac killer has never been caught. But who was this infamous serial killer? At first, it seemed like he had something against couples, since many of his victims were couples enjoying a quiet time together. Was the Zodiac a bitter loner, lashing out at those in love because he couldn't find it himself? Others have speculated he may have been a police officer or an ex military, given how he always seemed one step ahead of investigators and had a clear understanding of police procedures. So, who were the main suspects? Arthur Leigh Allen. The only legitimate official suspect ever named by police in the Zodiac case was Arthur Lane Allen. He lived in Vallejo near several of the crime scenes. He was also a convicted sex offender. Allen became a suspect in 1971 when his friend Don Cheney reported him to the police. According to Cheney, Allen once said he wanted to kill couples and called himself the Zodiac. Cheney said that Allen would use a gun with a flashlight attached to the barrel, like the Zodiac killer. He also owned a Zodiac brand watch with a crosshair symbol similar to the one the Zodiac killer used to sign his letters. Cheney was interviewed by San Francisco Police Department, and Arthur Allen was placed under investigation. In July of 1992, one of the Zodiac killer's victims, Michael Mitchell, picked Allen as the man who shot him in a police lineup. Despite all this, Arthur Allen was cleared because DNA and handwriting tests failed to link him to the crimes. He died in 1992. Other unofficial suspects include Gary Francis Post. In 2021, a group of independent investigators called the Casebreakers claimed Gary Post, an Air Force veteran, was the Zodiac. They pointed to scars on his forehead resembling police sketches and alleged cryptic messages in his old photos and writings. He died in 2018. Richard Gilgowski, a journalist who became a suspect after a friend claimed he matched the killer's description and had strange behavior. Some believe his voice matched a call made by the Zodiac to police, but there is no solid evidence against him. Lawrence Kane, a salesman with a sketchy background. He suffered a brain injury in a car accident that reportedly affected his impulse control. Some people connected him to victim Darlene Ferrin and claimed he was near several crime scenes. Earl Van Best Jr. In a book by his own son, Gary Stewart, Van Best was named as the Zodiac. The book makes connections through photos and handwriting comparisons, but experts widely dismiss the claims due to weak evidence. It's heartbreaking to know that justice has never been served in this case for the victims' families, and the Zodiac killer may forever remain a mystery. Still, there is always hope that one day the truth will finally come to light. Do you believe the Zodiac killer is still alive today? What is one unsolved crime that you really want to see solved in your lifetime? Comment below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true crime, mystery, and historical stories in easy English. See you next time.